For years now, there's been one bullshit myth about Donald Trump's electoral performance that just won't seem to die.
Trump populism has really closed the deal with the working class voters.
The working class voter who loves President Trump.
And the working class base.
The working class did support Trump.
This is wrong. In election after election, Democrats win working class voters. But there is a ticking time bomb inside the working class that should worry them. And it could be a key ingredient in a GOP comeback this November. Okay, before we get there, let's establish a couple facts about working class voters. Number one, both times Donald Trump ran for president, he lost working class people by double digits. The reason is pretty simple. All those Ohio Trump country diner safaris,
they done excellent as far as I'm concerned.
That's only part of the working class. Yes, Trump won big among working class white people, but both Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden won even bigger among working class people of color. So on the whole, the working class twice voted against Donald Trump. Number two, education and class are not the same thing. They mostly correlate. If you go to college, you're more likely to make more money, but not always. For our purposes, you can generally think of the working class and people without college degrees as being similar groups. Three, as demonstrated by this fun little tool from The Economist, there are all sorts of little things that indicate how a person is going to vote. Gender, marriage, religiosity, whatever. And not all of them are created equally. For me, for example, I am a white man without a college degree. Just take those two pieces of information, and statistically, I am a very likely Republican voter. But the second you plug in two other pieces of information, like being not religious and a dyed-in-the-wool homosexual, you get the complete opposite. Certain things are just a big enough part of a voter's worldview that they override everything else. And one of the biggest examples is race. Take this profile. A middle-class white man without a college degree, married with kids, lives in the suburbs, goes to an evangelical church every Sunday. 90% likely to vote for a Republican. Keep everything the same but switch his race from white to black, 90% likely to vote for a Democrat. When it comes to black voters, a lot of the things that divide white voters just don't have any effect. In 2020, there was a 47-point gap between how white people with and without college degrees voted. The gap among black voters with degrees and without? Zero. During the 2018 midterms, Latinos with degrees and without basically voted for Democrats the same. There was a single-digit gap between them. And that uniformity among voters of color has been a big reason why Democrats keep winning the working class. Even as white voters without degrees have moved heavily towards Republicans, black and Latino voters without degrees have stayed mostly Democrat. But then came 2020. And a big change. That year, the education gap among Latinos exploded, tripling in 2 years. Latino voters without degrees, especially men, shifted towards Republicans in a big way. In fact, it was so big that a white person with a college degree was more likely to be a Biden voter than a Latino person without one. A pretty enormous shift. And of course, there are a lot of caveats here, but there's also a lot of evidence that something larger is going on. An NBC tracking poll in 2012 found conservative Latinos supported Democratic control of Congress by 9 points. This year, that same group supports Republican control by 56 points, a 65-point swing in a decade. And that, in a nutshell, is what should be so concerning for Democrats. There are a lot of indications that Latino voters are moving away from voting like black voters and towards voting like white voters, divided along educational, class, and geographic lines. This is part of why a lot of Republican ads this year invoke themes of Democrats as elite or favoring the wealthy, and why there's some evidence that Democrats are doing worse in working class districts Biden won by double digits than suburban white-collar districts he won by like 4 points. And if you're a Democrat trying to win elections, that's really not a great trend. Because it's not just that they're dropping among a group that used to be reliable, it's that the voters they're losing have a lot more in common in life experience and cultural attitude with the average American voter, and especially the voters you need to win in, say, Midwestern swing states, than the ones Democrats are gaining. And if this trend continues in 2022, Democrats could not only find themselves without a whole lot of formerly safe seats, but as the self-described party of the disenfranchised and working people and people of color, find themselves a lot whiter and a lot richer than they thought.